If you are just joining us, we are just getting started in a few moments. We've got some registrants that are joining us here. You have made it to the right place. We are talking about setting holiday boundaries, and we are going to get started in just a few moments, so sit tight. I think I'll give it about another 60 seconds before we get started.
Sure.
I love that. Hello from Maryland. That's such a great idea. If you are on right now, why don't you give us a shout and share where you are from? And even more so, if you want to share, if you've got children, how old they are, or if you're expecting when you are due. It's so nice to see some people from all over. Welcome. Thank you for starting off your morning in California with us. Yay. Awesome. Well, if you're just getting online, thanks so much for being here. We are just about to get started. We'll be talking about setting holiday boundaries. Hello from all over the country. We're so excited to talk.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, Lauren, are you ready? Should we do this?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. I'll say hello. I'm dialing in from New Jersey, so I'm over on the East Coast with some of you as well. It's so nice to have you. On behalf of Vivvi, we are so grateful to welcome you today. We are really thrilled to get started on what I know will be a really interesting and helpful conversation on a really important and timely topic, setting holiday boundaries. But I know this is going to be really relevant for all year long. These are some tools we can take away, not even for the holidays, but for all time. I'm Gretchen Richer. I see a lot of faces or familiar names that I know. I'm so happy to welcome you back. If you are new to Vivvi, I'll just share that as an organization, we are on a mission to reinvent childcare and early learning for today's families. We do that in a number of ways. First and foremost, in New York, we have 3 campuses, soon to be 5, that specialize in learning and care for ages 6 weeks through 5 years. And then nationally, our in-home programs take our teachers and really everything about the school model and place it inside your home. We are trying to meet our families where they are physically, emotionally, and help with all the things. I'm also a mother of a 5-year-old. I'm constantly working on trying to find the right language for myself in my own parenting, as well as trying to give him all of the right tools so that he can feel good about his own boundary setting. So I'm here to listen as well. And if you've been online with us before, you know that we'll use about the first 30 to 45 minutes to present really some great information about setting boundaries. The content and examples that my colleague Lauren has brought to the session are they really connect well to the submissions by you, the audience. There's a lot of really great themes that we'll be discussing. And then we'll save the latter part of the webinar to answer some questions live. That said, please jump on the chat at any point. And if we can answer your questions throughout the webinar, we will. If not, we'll be sure to try to get them at the end. Judging by your pre-submitted content, there is a lot of reoccurring themes, which is, for me, so helpful to know that families are experiencing a lot of the same things. And it reminds me that we're not alone in this journey. And it's really exciting because much of what we're hoping to discuss is takeaways that can be really practical, applicable, and help you with your family to develop really good habits. Even if it's just a simple phrase, a gesture, or thinking, we hope that you can take that away. And when I say we, I really mean my colleague, Lauren, our expert speaker, Lauren Vien, to be the source of truth. Lauren joins us from Rose and Rex, which is an organization that provides resources for families to connect through positive language strategies and play experiences. In fact, we actually met a few months back when you led our positive language strategies webinar.
That's
and
great.
Among the things I love about you, Lauren, is that you really focus on actionable solutions. So please welcome my colleague, Lauren. Thank you so much for being here. If you wouldn't mind starting us off with telling us a little bit more about what you do and who you are, and then we'll jump into the webinar.
Sure. Thanks, Gretchen. It is so great to be back with Vivvi on a webinar and a really in-depth conversation for you. Rose and Rex is a playful parenting company, as Gretchen mentioned. So we support families through digital guides and online content, as well as personalized support and on-demand classes. So I'm the education director over at Rose and Rex. And before joining the team, I was a preschool teacher for many, many years here in New York City. I have two young children of my own, young-ish. Henry just turned 6 and Violet just turned 4. And when I was training to be a teacher, I studied at New York University. I have my master's in early childhood education and special education as well. One of my greatest passions is to take the language strategies, and a lot of that plays into the boundary setting that we'll be talking about today. But these language strategies that I used in the classroom setting, that I was trained and that I was taught to use, and then I sort of experimented and refined, and how to bring those same philosophies from a school experience to the home experience. It's something that I've been working on since I've had my own children, and something that I work a lot with parents now. Sometimes, especially, if you're in an early education experience with your family, possibly at Vivvi, you might hear how teachers speak to the children and say like, oh, they knew how to support that child in that moment. How can I do that at home? So that's something that has been really exciting to sort of take these, teacher type tricks and bring them to life. Home is very different than school, but we can certainly be aligned in the way that we're communicating in both places. So I'm really happy to be here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I find personally that, extended family and holiday situations can be incredibly joyful. And also as a parent, when you're sort of in your own world with your children, it can be a little overwhelming to sort of bring your world into a different scenario. So that's what we're going to support you with today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. And
Sure.
you just popped in a great tip sheet with takeaways for your holidays. So there's a link if you want to jump on, you can always download it. And I'll be doing that after this, because as I said to my husband last night, I said, oh, you should jump on this webinar. I started to try to articulate what you were going to do. And I said, well, she just says it so much better. It just comes out in such a very wonderful way. So looking forward for your tips, and walk us through what we'll specifically cover today.
Sure. So I really wanted to dive into 3 kinds of boundaries. And again, we're talking about holidays, but these could be things that are on your mind all year round. The first is helping our children set physical boundaries for themselves. What are they comfortable with when it comes to physical affection or personal space? And how do we set our children up before, during, and after holiday gatherings to get them some really valuable practice when it comes to boundary setting? So that's the first. The second is how to set boundaries for your immediate family. I feel like a lot of the questions that came in upon registration were questions that were in this area. How do we balance our regular routine or the language that we use at home with what we're going to encounter during the holidays? Holiday travel definitely sort of amplifies that. And so does like a rigorous celebrating schedule. I think a lot of us are just packed with so much fun stuff that it can feel really hard to sort of hold on to your regular routine, which might really work for your children and for you. And then the third would be tips and tricks to help us set boundaries for ourselves as parents. Sometimes there's this added pressure, inward or outward, to be extra fun and extra present. And sometimes, I feel like for me personally, I'm doing the best I can regardless of the holidays. And then when there are other responsibilities or obligations or expectations, it can be really hard to balance how much time I keep for myself and how I sort of balance all the different things I'm trying to do. And then of course, we'll have some time for Q&A. And the link that Jess dropped into the chat, that PDF that you can download, something that we try to do with every workshop or webinar that we offer to families is have like a very straightforward takeaway that you can print or that you can email to your partner or to whoever is helping take care of your child, whether it's a family member or a babysitter. If something really resonates with you, it can be hard to say, I went to this, 40-minute chat and there were so many things I wanted to try. Sometimes seeing just like a bullet point version of one type of strategy and sharing it with someone who can be on the same page with you can really make a big difference and sort of help you begin practicing it at the same time.
Love that. Leading with data.
Yeah. And also taking the pressure off instead of like, I'm going to do this thing and I want you to do it too. Just sort of going straight to the source and saying like, here's something that I learned from so-and-so. It can be a great conversation starter, and take a little bit of the power struggle off.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Of course.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay, great. So when it comes to helping children set physical boundaries for themselves, the reason why I wanted to start here is because I think that, especially with where we are in terms of COVID, I have found a lot of the adults in my extended family sort of craving making up for lost time. And I also think that with how distant we have been from extended family here and there, like in different phases of COVID, that the adults in the family might feel closer and more connected than the children do. Like the children might not remember they saw this person a year ago, or they might not remember the conversations that they had, or, how comfortable they once felt with this person. I always lead when I talk about physical boundaries that every act of physical affection should be a choice. And that comes to a hug that I would like to request from my child and a hug that anyone else would like to request from my child. If my children don't feel like they want to hug me, then I never push that issue, because to me, every single act of physical affection should be their choice. And the reason why I always like to talk about that is because for some families, they'll say, oh, well, I wouldn't push my child to hug or kiss someone goodbye that is outside of our immediate family. But when it comes to like mom or dad, or maybe sometimes grandparents are lumped into that, inner circle, then we should always feel like we can be connected physically in that way. And I see that at the same time, I know children and I know child development, and I know that when children have an opportunity to practice challenging things in their safe space, like home or like school, in the people that they see the most often, they're going to be better able to use that skill or set that boundary for themselves in the broader world. So it's why I'm really picky with things like tickling. Like Gretchen and I were talking about this the other day. My husband loves to tickle people, and some of us like to be tickled and some of us don't. So the rule that we have set in our family is that, even if someone is laughing, if a child or if mama says no or stop tickling, then immediately the tickling has to stop. And it can go both ways. It can go when someone says to stop, or it can go when someone's body language is saying like, I am done with this, but I'm not saying stop. And it's a really, like, it seems very picky, but it's a really valuable way to model consent for our children. My son at 6 he understands more of the nuances than my 4-year-old daughter, but he'll know that whatever comes first, whether I say stop tickling, it stops, or whether I look like I wanted to stop and I haven't said it, then it stops. And most of the other people in my family like to be tickled. But for me, even now my 4-year-old will say, like, remember, mama doesn't like to be tickled. So that's another way of just sort of setting a physical boundary, talking about what feels comfortable to different people. And when it comes to holidays, I would say, before is the really crucial piece. Like before I see any group of people, it's just a very casual conversation where I'll say to my family, like, to my children, oh, we're going to see so-and-so and so-and-so. We haven't seen them in this many months or this many years, and they really missed you. How do you think you want to say hello to them? They might really want to hug you. How do you feel about that? And then we brainstorm other ways to say hello, whether they say, I can't wait to hug that person, I still review, because they might change their mind in that moment. You can smile, you can say hello with your voice, you can wave, you can give a fist bump, just reminding them that there's no judgment and there's no way to greet a person that is better than the other. It doesn't mean that you love someone more because you hug or kiss them. It's just a different way of saying hello and goodbye.
Yeah.
And I think that reminding your children that the important thing is to greet someone. Like, do I expect my children when they walk in someone's home to do something to say hello? Yes, I do. They can't just like walk in and not acknowledge someone. We do practice different ways of greeting, but it doesn't have to be physical.
Yeah. And the during, thank you for this. The during, as you're reminding them it's your choice. You can also,
Mhm.
that's first and foremost for your child and for your immediate family. But are you aware that you're also saying that for the other adult in the room, or the adult that wanted that hug that's not getting it? That is
I
that
think it's
way of
just as much, if not more, for the grown up because, and I always make sure that, when I see family or adults I haven't seen in a while, like I crave that catch up time. So sometimes I have to remind myself going into a setting like, okay, I'm going to stay nearby my children until like everyone's had their chance to say hello because I want to support them with this boundary setting. When in reality, I want to like go hug and kiss everyone in the room and like go do my thing.
Yeah.
I'm like staying nearby so I can sort of check in with how those interactions are going. And if someone says like, where's my hug? Even if my child seems on their face and in their body language that they want that hug, I'll say like, remember, it's your choice. You could also, and sometimes, depending on family members that we've had these conversations before, I'll say it with a smile and I'll say, you could also, and there's going to be grandparent love or, people that are familiar with your children, sometimes that will push a bit, but even just saying, when the child is maybe out of earshot, like, I know it seems like so picky or so, however you want to label it, but it's really important because I want them to practice being able to say no. Like some people are going to want to hug them and all of us might agree that that's not appropriate. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes it takes a little bit of a reminder to be like, oh yeah, this is practice for them. Of course I want to support that.
Right.
And sometimes it helps people sort of separate their own personal feelings.
Right. Thank you. And so now after the fact, you're kind of coming back to full circle with this conversation.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be immediately. It's not like on the way home from a holiday gathering, I'm going to have a big like chat of like, who did you hug? Who did you not? I
Yeah.
don't want to ever put my own feelings on these type of situations for my children. This is really an exploration in what feels good to you, and also me learning and them learning like how physically affectionate are they. Sometimes we think we know that our child is like a hugger or a kisser because that's how they are with us. But there's lots of people who are only like that with their very, very close family. It doesn't mean that like anything goes, at a holiday party. So I think the after should actually be sort of more ongoing things like, just paying attention in opportunities like I shared with the tickling, things like, if there's another child who's with your child and you notice that they're kind of like body language trying to move away, you can take that opportunity to say to your own child, oh, I see that so and so is moving their body away. They might need a little space or they might not want a hug right now. Or if your child goes in for a physical gesture, to afterwards say quietly, oh, you were so happy to see them. Next time, remember to ask, like, do you want to hold hands?
Yeah.
Just helping your child pick up on those cues. If you're holding hands with someone like another child your age and they kind of pull their hand away, that's a sign that even though they're not saying right now, maybe they don't want to hurt your feelings, they don't look like they want to hold your hand right now. And them being more aware of those signs will also help them think about like what they want for themselves.
Mhm. That makes sense. Thank you. And so I'm going back to some of the questions that our audience
Mhm.
asked, and I'm aware of some families have newborns or first time
Mhm.
families seeing how family for the first time. And obviously those children can't advocate for themselves and don't necessarily have the tools yet. Um, how are you recommending, this is more sort of a grown-up conversation, thoughts about entering into the holidays in that space with boundaries?
Yeah. I mean, it's challenging, right? There's especially like in a setting where there's just so much love to give and so much love that your child will be receiving. For me, the before is the crucial piece when a child doesn't yet have the language or the ability to express, even body language wise, what they feel comfortable with. So as a parent, especially when it comes to germ safety and just health in terms of like all of the sicknesses that are going around right now, I would say the before would be me and, my parenting partner, if I have one, deciding like what are we okay with, like what, we're going to go to this holiday party, and maybe just being there is like enough exposure for us, and maybe we don't want anyone to hold our baby or hug our child or etc. So I think knowing what you feel comfortable with and taking that time and then expressing it maybe to the host or to the person that you feel closest with who might be there. For me, it's still at this point in COVID is like my mom. I would lean on her and say like, hey, we're going to go, there were certain things that we went to and I said like, we're going to keep on a mask. Like if you could just, tell the aunts and uncles, like we don't have COVID, we're just being cautious, that would be really helpful to us and help us feel comfortable. So if there's someone that you can sort of have help advocate for you, you could try it that way. Or if you just want to like send a quick email or a quick text, I think reminding ourselves like people just want to be with us. And often if it means being with us in a different way than they would expect, they would usually rather take that than not have us feel comfortable coming at all. So I think the before is really helpful. Figure out what you are comfortable with and then share it with at least one person or the host so that you aren't in a situation where you're trapped and you feel on the spot saying like, actually, no, I don't think we're going to have anyone hold the baby, or
Yeah,
you lost
yeah,
your baby and then you feel like it's too late. And if one person holds, can everyone hold?
right.
So I think sort of just figuring out, and also sometimes saying to people, in this big setting, in this party, here's how we're going to do it. When I come to visit you in January by myself, we'll do it a different way.
Mhm.
That can also be helpful.
I love that. That's really plays into our next portion, if you don't mind,
Mm,
go ahead.
yeah.
Because it is about sort of setting general holiday boundaries for us as we're interacting with other families, other friends, etc.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that always is good for myself to remember is that it's okay to not go to everything. I think that when I set holiday boundaries for my own immediate family, my biggest priority is preserving our time, our quality time, and also the way that we spend our time normally. I think that balancing social gatherings with home play, like our family needs play experiences at home to sort of feel happy and healthy and connected. And yes, it's busier during the holidays and that's fine, and maybe there's less home play, but I can't have entire weekends where we're not home at all, because I know that what will happen is like we'll be rushing around and I'll feel totally disconnected from them and vice versa, and we don't really have that time to sort of like regroup and recharge and then go out into whatever we need to do. When I say in that second bullet point, keep your child's social stamina in mind, I would say, after months and months when COVID first started of being very, very isolated, our family of four had like an outdoor gathering with my sister's children. She has three. So all five cousins were together. And when they left, it was like an epic outdoor day. We were so happy we could safely play with each other. And my son just like laid on the driveway and just like didn't talk and just laid there. And that was how we felt, thinking about like how draining it can be to be on, and how, in overstimulating environments, it can really wipe your child out and it can really wipe you out. So you have to kind of balance that. If you have three back-to-back parties in one day, maybe it's not realistic to go to all three and you take the middle one off. And again, you can always say, this isn't going to work for us. We can see you after the holidays. We could see you in a smaller setting. Just sort of getting creative with trying to connect with the people you want to see during the holidays, but maybe at a different time or in a different way. And that goes for the third point, like ahead of time, sharing the parts of your regular routine that you're going to stick with throughout the holidays. Like maybe that you could play around with bedtime, but your child has to nap every day for things to like go even remotely smoothly. And sometimes if you share that ahead of time, that can be helpful. Hey, like we are all yours for an all day Christmas Day celebration from 12 to 2. So and so is going to need to nap in a dark room. And other than that, we're super flexible. I think that also, even if you don't share that and you just know that that is going to be what you do, it can help you sort of have a game plan so that things don't unravel as you add on more and more fun things. And Gretchen, you and I were talking about this, like it can also be helpful to think about what is it that your extended family is really, or your friends are craving from you? Like,
Mhm.
are there certain traditions that happen super late at night? And that's really what they want to do as a whole family. And they're going to be so crushed if you're not there, you don't do those things. Instead of just saying, well, we can't do them because we have to go to bed, saying like, I know it's really important to you that we do this thing. Can we do it a little earlier? Can we make it a morning thing? Really try to shift family traditions to be a little bit more what you need, but also show your family that there's an openness there. I think sometimes it does cause power struggles when, you come in with like a list of requirements. But if you say like, we need to nap, but this, and this can happen, it can be really helpful for everyone to feel like you're working together and everybody's getting more of what they need.
I loved this. This was such a aha moment for me when we were chatting, because we get very wrapped up in our schedule and what we need for our own sanity and health. And
Mhm.
we forget that that does have an impact on our families, and we don't always understand what that could be. And you had a really great example of, I know the tradition is that we always eat dinner at 2 p.m.
Mhm.
My child will be so hangry and have a meltdown. So we're going to have a little lunch at 12:30, and then they're going to sit at the table and do their own thing, and maybe eat, maybe not, but they'll be present. And it's a way for
Right.
you to kind of get what you need and also be a part of the tradition
Right.
too. I love that.
Yeah, and I shared that with Gretchen because like even now I felt like I could say that when my children were barely 2, but even now at 4 and 6, they don't eat lunch at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And no one wants to sit at a dinner table if that's when they're eating lunch. So, we sort of stick with this like fun pre-mini lunch of foods that they're familiar with that really fuel their body. And then they taste a few things that are unfamiliar that they see once a year at the holiday table, and everyone gets to have their company, and we make it work like that. So yeah, thanks for reminding me. That is a great example of shifting things to make sure that the children are getting what they need, and also that they can be present for some of those things that are important to the extended family. I
Yeah.
think too, when it comes to setting boundaries for your immediate family, sometimes when we even hear that phrase, we think it means like not going to anything or skipping things, but it can mean like giving them a try and then adjusting. We don't have to feel stuck. Even if you RSVP to something and 3 days before you realize, wow, this weekend is looking a lot like last weekend. Last weekend felt disastrous because we did too many things at once, saying to a friend or a family member, you know what, I really thought we could make it and I'm thinking more about it, and I think that that's a time where we really need to be home, or we really need to be napping, or we need to go to bed early, whatever it is. And just trying to find another time to see each other, or thanking them for including us. But we don't have to feel stuck. We've had, like, my family has had visits where we cut the visit short. Like, we thought we would stay for all of winter break, and then 3 or 4 days in, we feel like, I think that maybe it's time to get back to the regular routine. So if you can leave things a bit more flexible, if you have a extended family situation where you're able to say, well, we're planning on being here this many days or this many hours, but let's see.
Yeah.
Always lead with that sort of blurry, I'm going to take my cue from my child. And if you're not, then do what you think will work, and then let yourself adjust if you need to, rather than getting stuck. I think too, we think of the holidays now as a long span of time, at least many of us do. Like, for me, I personally think of it as Thanksgiving to New Year's, and things are a bit different than regular everyday life between that time. but it doesn't need to be throw everything out the window and then like get back on track after New Year's. I think if you are in holiday mode and you've been adjusting eating and sleeping and daily activities, and it's only been a couple days, then you say, you know what? I think we're going to do our regular thing. I think we're going to get back to our routine, even though school isn't here, we have time off from work, and make it whatever you feel serves you well the rest of the year instead of just kind of like bearing through it.
Thank you. A couple things I would want to ask around here, and maybe this goes into our last slide, but thinking about how when you're walking into someone else's house, or if you are visiting, or if it's happening in your own house, there may be, usually I want to lump this into the grandparent bucket, but this doesn't always have to be grandparents. My particular parents are in this bucket, but there's sometimes a question about disciplining or holding the children accountable, maybe in a misaligned way than you want, or not holding them accountable, and like lack of rules, and giving them candy and giving them everything and presents. And where does this lie for you? As far, is this still the conversation to have ahead of time on how, on those topics, or how are you approaching that?
I mean, you can't be prepared for every wild thing that comes your way, because there will always be surprises, for better or worse.
Yeah.
But if you, and I think that's especially true with younger children, or for families who have newborns or babies, or maybe your child was a baby and now they're being seen as a toddler and a child. So now new things are being introduced, especially when it comes to like treats and things like that. Usually babies are safe from that situation. But I mean, I think that yes, there are things that are going to repeat themselves that you have to decide how you're going to handle. It's helpful to give it some thought before. I think also sometimes we shift our stance on things. Now I know at 4 and 6, if they have more sugar than they're used to, like, they will be okay. They will eventually go to sleep. I think the first of those things, you're like, well, how is this even going to work? So, maybe you decide as a parent that you let some things go now that you didn't last year, or maybe you are okay just sort of experimenting with it. I think that in terms of like going to bed later or having an extra cookie, those things, I think people generally feel either they tell people this is not going to work for us, we're not going to do that, or they kind of let things go and, say it's holiday time, we're going to do something different when we go home. That's fine. I think in terms of language, like the way people are speaking to your child, the expectations they might have for your child in terms of, behaving a certain way in a certain indoor setting. Sometimes like a house has a lot of breakable things, and maybe that's not the case for you at home. I always try to reframe things. So, if I hear someone say like, no running, stop running over and over again, and I know that all the children in this house actually do need to run, I'll just tell them what they can do instead. Like, I sort of insert myself, not in a way where I would say to my parent, like, don't tell them not to run. I would just say, wow, it looks like everyone has a lot of energy. If it is even remotely possible, I think sometimes like cold, fresh air is the best in these situations. I would have the kids bundle up and I would run outside with them, and we would just kind of get it out of our system. But you can find other ways. I think that the physical cooped upness, if there's a lot of people in a home, if it gets a little bit crowded or hot, like no one feels great in those situations. And it is a great idea to have a few like tricks up your sleeve. Stationary physical things like musical chairs or freeze dance. That's a very easy way to say, oh, it looks like everyone really needs to move. Let's do this instead of running. And you can even support the host or whoever is trying to involve themselves and say, I heard Uncle Bob say he wasn't comfortable with running in the house. So let's do something else instead. Like, let's take all this energy and do something else instead. So I think you can, without saying that it's the wrong approach, you can just sort of get yourself in there, especially, your children best. What replacements you can make to sort of get their needs met without kind of getting involved in whatever they're being told they shouldn't do.
For sure. You could pass them the worksheet too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Depending on your relationship, of course.
There you go. All right, let's head to the last and super important, setting boundaries for ourselves.
Okay. So when it comes to boundaries for ourselves, I mean, I shared a little bit when I was speaking in the very beginning. It is helpful to sort of acknowledge, the expectations we have for ourselves as parents, especially during this time, and are they realistic? Are we expecting ourselves to be on socially 100 to 10% of the time? Are we going to school celebrations and family celebrations, and does that work for us or not? I think that it's definitely harder to be mindful of your language and like use your best parenting strategies when you are running on empty. And if you're tired, if you are like emotionally drained or physically exhausted, you're not going to speak the way that you maybe normally would or that you would like to. So I shared this on Instagram this morning, something that I often talk to parents about when it comes to your child having a challenging behavior or an unwanted behavior. Like before you even address the behavior itself, pausing to say, why is this happening? Like, why am I seeing this behavior? And what does my child need? Like, every behavior has a need behind it. Like, what is the why behind this behavior? And that can often help you figure out how to address the challenging behavior. If it's happening because they're, tired or haven't been active enough, then you can sort of take it from there. So I've been trying this with myself. If I hear myself speaking to my kids in a way where I know my tone is not neutral or warm, instead it's like irritated or, I, instead of judging myself, am really trying to get to the why. Like, why am I speaking this way to my kids? Like, what do I need? Like, what is going to help me in this moment be a better version of myself? Or how do I feel more balanced? So, just sort of acknowledging that there's a reason for the way that I'm feeling and speaking. And sometimes it's impossible. If what I know I need is an extra 4 hours of sleep, I can't just like leave my parents and be like, leave my children and say, okay, I'll be back when I'm feeling recharged. But I can, if this is happening in the afternoon, make some shifts in my day so that I know I can get to bed earlier. Maybe while I'm playing with them, I'm doing things that I would normally do at night, like tidying up so that when they go to bed, I can go to bed quicker. So those are some things that you can try to do to sort of set some boundaries for yourself. If you realize that every day you're asking yourself these questions like, why am I acting or reacting this way? And the answer is always that you haven't had any alone time, then the boundary you have to set for yourself is you either need a chunk of time or, for me, like sometimes I just need a walk around the block by myself in the cold air before I like do the dinner, bath, bedtime stretch. And it really is helpful. And if that's what I need, then that's the boundary that I set. Would it be lovely if when my husband came home from work, we like all four of us played together right away? Sure. But that doesn't work for me right now. Like what I need for myself is literally 5 minutes by myself.
Yeah.
So some of those boundaries it's a great time to set them now when you're sort of doing more and more and more, but we should try to hold on to them because I bet it would help us all the time if we sort of were more in tune with these things.
Mhm.
I also try to reflect on, what will help me feel more playful and present. Like if I'm judging myself and I'm like, well, this is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year and I don't feel very playful or present with my kids, then like, how can it be that way? Involving my kids in the prep is something that has helped me even since they were little. If I'm going to wrap presents, then they're going to wrap them with me. And if they don't look the way they used to, that's great because we listened to Christmas music and we wrapped presents together. We got it done and we were together. And that kind of stuff sometimes helps. Like you're, getting through the to-do list, but you're also finding a way to be with them in that moment.
Yeah.
Something that we've talked about before in our last conversation with Vivvi is this 7 out of 10 rule that, with positive language, with mindful parenting, you want 7 out of 10 things that you say to your child to be positive. And that doesn't mean that you're constantly telling them wonderful things. It's like what I was talking about earlier with the replacement. It's like instead of saying, don't run, you're saying, let's play musical chairs. It's like shifting a negative to a positive alternative.
Mhm.
So this is something that I was taught when I was training to be a teacher, and it's something that's stuck with me as a parent, that perfection isn't even the goal, that it's beneficial to our kids if we're not perfect, because they should know that that's not attainable. And it also gives us opportunities to, apologize and acknowledge when we haven't spoken in a way that we wish that we had spoken. Saying things like, I'm sorry, I was, using a angry tone with you. I really am so tired because I went to bed too late last night, and that has nothing to do with you. And today, when you go to bed, I'm going to try to go to bed too. And tomorrow I'm going to, work to use a warmer tone with you. um, you know, this 7 out of 10 rule is also really helpful when it comes to the language that we hear other people use with our kids. Because sometimes if you're with extended family and you hear these things that you have been working hard not to say, you kind of feel like maybe some of your work is being undone, or you worry that it's kind of wearing on your child. But really, if they're often with you, or they're often with an educator or a caregiver that you trust is on the same page with you in terms of language, it's a good lesson that everyone speaks differently. And the way that you speak inside your home with your immediate family is not going to be the way that every person you interact with phrases everything. And sometimes it's a good reminder that people we love also communicate differently. Extended family that we care about, that we love spending time with, are going to address certain things in a different way. So I think sort of reminding yourself, 7 out of 10, like, I speak a ton to my kids. If they hear other people speaking in a different way, it's okay.
Yeah,
Be
yeah. Oh,
helpful.
that's a great it's a great way to kind of wrap it up. Thank you for that.
Of course.
We're going to jump into questions, and I think there's a question that came up that is really kind of similar to how you just named that, not everyone is going to be talking to your children
Mhm.
the way that you hope all the time. And um, we all probably deal with this to a certain extent, but visiting family members who, regardless of the topic, it could just, it's pushing your buttons in
Mm,
the beginning, and it might not be even related to your child. It could just be like, oh, we're going there, we have differences of opinion, or we see things differently. And I know that the holidays are typically the times where all those hot button topics come up that, gosh, we don't want to discuss them as adults, but we really just want to focus on family. And any advice redirecting adults in that situation, and supporting us in that way?
I mean, it depends on the specific scenario, right? But we, just like our children, are always allowed, or can allow ourselves to say, like, I'm not up for chatting about that right now,
Yeah.
um, or chatting for however long you can handle, and then shifting gears, saying like, I'm gonna go check on my child, or, oh, we're shifting gears, we're gonna go do this holiday activity now. I think that it depends on your relationships. I think that if you have an open-ish relationship, it's okay to say, we, we all have differences of opinions, and maybe we shouldn't talk about this right now. Or maybe you and I should get tea or get a drink and like talk about this another time, just the two of us. It doesn't show that you're closed-minded. It just shows like you're not going there right now at this holiday dinner.
You're effectively setting a boundary to not continue the conversation.
Right, right.
Yeah. You didn't know that you were going to be giving us all of our
Yeah.
grown up conversations.
I know. I mean, I should be taking notes for myself, right? I mean, I think there you have two very different choices. One is to say, like, I'm not going there, or you go there and then you say, like, okay, that's enough. Let's talk about something else. Or you make yourself busy and you
Mhm.
don't go there at all.
And
You can do that in a variety of ways.
yeah, to be fair too, I think so many of the ideas that you're giving us for how we are teaching and sharing with our kids are really applicable to kids of all ages, right?
Yeah,
So having
definitely.
these simple conversations with grown-ups. Um, Similarly, there's a question about, I think it's similar to what we were talking about, like disciplining or
Yeah.
having the conversation when you are actually in the space. So you're next to another adult, and they're they're maybe sharing one piece of information or one way of allowing your child to do something or not doing something, and you actually do feel totally different about it. And I think we've talked a little bit about that, but can you share more on some tips?
I mean, I think from a pretty young age, children are able to understand that things are different in different places, you know. I think especially if you're open as a family, you know, your child will come home even at maybe 3 and say like, oh, so and so gets to do this, and you say like, different families make different choices, or you know, it sounds like that works for them, here's what works for us. I think especially when we're open and we have those conversations like ongoing, they know that different settings have different rules, you know, and usually they're pretty accepting. I think that if you worry that it's like hurting your child's feelings, then maybe you might step in. But if there's certain things that are like not allowed somewhere that you allow in your home, like we, for many, many years, not right now because we have a different sofa, but we would like take apart our couch and like build with it and use all the cushions. And like, that's not something that works for everyone. Like, not everyone wants you to like take apart and dismantle their furniture, you know? So
Mhm.
things like that, I think are great opportunities when your child starts moving around the pillows to say like, oh, you know, we didn't ask if, or even just saying like, you know, we're going to save that for home and we'll
Yeah.
play with the couch that way at home. And for here, we're going to use the couch just for sitting instead of building. Just making some distinctions that things are different in different places doesn't mean that my child is going to be crushed that they can't ever build with a couch. They just know that we're going to do that play at home and we're going to do a different kind of play here. And again, thinking about like, what can we do instead? If you feel
Yeah.
like your child is being hovered over in a setting away from your own house, especially when it comes to holiday gatherings, and they're being told like, no, 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 you can't, you can't, you can't, like that does wear on a child, especially when they're used to being given like alternatives and some freedom. It doesn't mean your child doesn't have limits, but they're just not spoken to in that like, you can't, you don't way over and over again. Then you reframe, and you can always do it away from the grown up and say quietly to your child, it seems like here, you know, so and so does this,
Mhm.
so I think this would be a good idea instead. So you can kind of do that workaround too.
That was great. That was a tricky one. Thank you for navigating
Yeah,
us.
of course.
Any other questions coming up? A few more minutes. While we wait, you might be typing something in or just contemplating. We've got two links that we have put in the chat. So one is at the top of the hour, we put one in that is related to setting holiday boundaries. And the other is looking for more tips just around positive language. So again, having those guides that can be really an actionable takeaway can give you some really basic tools, tips and tricks. Okay, and at this point, I don't see any other chats coming through, so I'm gonna start to wrap up. This has been so very helpful. We got one coming in. Oh, it's just
I think it's just, yeah,
another link. It's a good
that's
link to use.
perfect.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
thanks, Jessica.
I
That's a great way to wrap up.
I'll also say this is being recorded. So whether you have been here or you want to share this out with friends, this is a really important one that I want to share with my partner because one, trying to be aligned in your own household on what you're thinking and doing, especially as you're entering into the holidays. So you can be kind of a united front. But this is really something that I feel so strongly that can be applied all year round. So heartfelt thanks to you, Lauren, for giving us some really important tips and tricks. Oh, yes, let's do one more. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, of course. So one is about preserving traditions. And so one family's Christmas practice or one family's related to all things Santa when our family knows that our family celebrates Christmas in a different way. And so having to balance those two ideas. Oh, and both families will be together and opting out is not an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's a good
I'm just reading it now too, so I can get some clarity. Okay, so it sounds like the person's child is 5 or almost 5 and knows that Santa is not part of their immediate family's equation, but there are other children
Yes.
present maybe
Yes.
who are believers or, celebrate with Santa. I think that for that, I would try to respect the other family's choice to uphold that specific tradition and tell my child, Santa is a challenging one. I think that a lot of families now are saying to their child that, there's a story of Santa and that some people call it a game, like, we can play the Santa game. We can like pretend these gifts are from Santa and you can open them. And some families play this in a different way, meaning like they might think that Santa is a real person bringing these gifts. So I think saying, to your child, even at almost 5, I think that that's a good place to start with. People think about Santa differently, and you get gifts from so and so and so and so, but not from Santa, and they play the Santa game, and it's something that they can do on their own. Children are children, and they're going to say things like Santa isn't real, or I know the truth about Santa. And you have to decide if you would ever tell your child to not talk about that, or if you just want to really emphasize that people celebrate and talk about Santa in different ways, and that we don't even really have to talk about it because they really have decided what's important to them. And I think that if it comes to celebrating alongside someone who wants to give your child a gift from Santa and also other children's gift from Santa, then that's totally up to you. You could say like, we're not opening a gift from Santa and we can open gifts from lots of other people. Or you can let your child think that when you go to this one particular party that they get a gift as part of a Santa game or a Santa tradition.
Yeah, I like that as a story. That's how, and I really appreciate like sharing that this is how this particular family celebrates, and that's different from ours, and we don't need to really worry about that.
Right. And it is challenging to tell your child, I don't want you to talk about this. Like, you don't want to make it seem like a forbidden topic or a secret or something that they're doing that's like horribly wrong that you don't want to discuss with them. But saying like, we don't need to talk about it with them because they really feel strongly about this and we do something a very different way. And then you can just sort of, listen in and hear what tidbits your child might share or not share. And sometimes emphasizing like the special things that you do that are not Santa can go a really long way. Like, oh, well, we always hide candy canes in our house, and that's something that's special that we do that other people don't do. Or not that you want to make it like a competition, but that's something that's special to us, that's different than what another family might do. And if you don't feel like you have something that feels like very unique, then maybe this year you do come up with something like that. I think that sometimes there's just like a craving from the children's point of view, or for people to want to include everyone in that because they feel like your child would so be missing out if they don't observe Santa giving them a gift, when really your child probably has lots of other ways to celebrate already.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we threw you so many holiday curveballs.
No worries. I was so happy to be here.
Love having you back. If you'd like to
Thanks.
keep learning from Lauren, we've got Rose and Rex up, and I'm sure we will be having you back soon. We just really always love to speak with you. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Happy holidays to everyone.
You too.
Stay
Bye.
healthy. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.